Hi, how are you guys doing? My name is Antos, and today I want to talk about lenses. Probably the second most often asked question I get right after what kind of camera I should buy is what kind of lenses I should invest in. This obviously applies to anybody who has a DSLR, but also any of the other sort of newer cameras like the Blackmagic camera, for example. It's basically any camera that has an interchangeable lens system. And most likely you'll be using, especially when you're starting out, using a DSLR lenses or still photography lenses. The reason is because they're very good, but also they're readily available and they're affordable. So if you're just starting out, I always suggest to people, when you're buying your camera, it's good to buy a camera which already has a nice sort of a kit lens included in it. Now, what I mean by nice, I mean basically it has a decent range. That's sort of a good starting point for any videographer or filmmaker out there. I think a good range would be somewhere sort of like a middle ground between anywhere between even like 20-30 millimeters to like 70-80 millimeters. Now this, for example, this is a Canon 70 that I got a few years back. And this one came with a kit lens that goes from 18 millimeters to 135 millimeters. So it covers even beyond the sort of the nice middle ground range. Now, in case you don't know what that means, what those numbers represent, that's basically your focal length. Now, it's measured always in millimeters, and the bigger the number, that means that basically the more your lens can zoom in. So, for example, if you have like this one, 135 millimeter lens that you can go up here in and you can zoom in on that, that's going to be like you're going to be able to zoom in really far on your subject and get a completely different kind of look than, for example, if I were to zoom out all the way on this lens and I'm at 18 millimeters. Then it's a pretty wide angle lens at that point. Many people out there will tell you don't buy kit lenses or even don't buy zoom lenses. Because they're just not as good, and it's true. I mean, as you're going to progress and you're going to start getting better at with your results, you'll probably want to eventually end up upgrading your lenses and getting into some higher quality optics, which but at the same time they're going to cost you a lot more money. The reason why I say that getting a good kit lens with your camera is probably the best way to go at the beginning is because, especially when you don't know that much about what kind of lenses you prefer shooting with, for example, for the kind of style of filming that you're doing, and also when you're just not sure what kind of effects you can get with different kind of lenses, then having a good kit lens is probably sort of like I said, a good starting point, because you can really experiment, and especially when you have it in one lens that you can easily basically zoom in and out of, and you can quickly change it to 85 millimeter, 50 millimeter. You can really sort of experiment, and you can see what kind of effects basically you can get with those different focal lengths. Whereas if you're just starting out, and let's say you just buy one lens, let's say this 50 millimeter lens, which is a great lens, but you just buy this, and you just basically experiment with this, you don't have a way of knowing even what kind of other possibilities or styles of shooting you might sort of encounter out there. So. And also, like, even if you have a lot of money and you right away, let's say, invest into, let's say, some really nice set of prime lenses, again, the problem is when you're starting out, people usually are, I know when I was back in the day when I was starting out myself, you kind of tend to get a little bit lazy sometimes, and so you don't feel like, first of all, you don't feel probably like carrying all the lenses with you. But even if you do have in your camera bag, when you're on location, things quickly change and you want to basically swap from one lens to another. Sometimes because you're not sure even what kind of a lens is good for this scenario, you're not going to go through the effort of taking the camera, basically, putting the camera basically away, taking the lens, and then swapping the lenses on your camera and then trying out that shot with that lens. You're just not going to be trying it out that often. Whereas when you have a zoom lens, all it takes for you is just rotate the ring up here, and you right away you have a different focal length, so you can really experiment. Like it's and so that's why those kit lenses, especially with that mid range of like 20 to, like I said, 70, even like 100 millimeters, is a really good starting point. Now with time you will want to upgrade it. The reason is because Most of the time the optics, I mean, they're decent in these lenses, as in I'm talking about like the sharpness and color reproduction. But what pretty much all those kit lenses and just like most zoom lenses suffer from is they're basically not as fast. And what that means is that the aperture or the iris basically inside the lens is not able to open as that far out. And so a lot of the light gets lost when it hits the sensor, basically when it travels through the lens and hits the sensor of your camera. So for example, like this lens, let me just see up here, it is a 3.5 f-stop. That's the fastest or the widest that it can open. And f-stops, just you kind of, that's that's a measurement that you use for basically how much light actually the lens is able to pass through it. So the lower the number of the f-stop, the more light the camera basically allows it to, the lens allows it to pass through. And also with that, it means that you can get a wider depth of, a more narrower depth of field. So bigger sort of that blurring kind of effect that you want to sometimes get with your background or your foreground elements. And now another thing that a lower f-stop number, or basically a faster lens, allows you to do is basically, like I said, capture more light. So definitely when you're shooting in low light conditions, like outside of, at night or something like that, then definitely you will want to have faster lenses, because like I said, if you have this kit lens and you're trying to shoot, let's say, a romantic scene, with just a candle lit, you're just not going to get enough light hitting the sensor, which means that then you have to you usually put up the ISO settings in your camera to compensate for the dark image, and then with that you're degrading your image quality. Basically you're adding more noise. So like I said, so once you've sort of experimented with sort of your kit lens, you've tried out different things, and you kind of see what kind of focal lengths you prefer in your style of shooting, then you'll probably want to upgrade your lenses. Now if you kind of want to learn some of the basic effects that you can get with the wide angle lenses versus medium range or telephoto lenses, which are the really kind of big zooms like 100 or 200 millimeters, then I have a great tutorial where I show you basically side-by-side examples of the same shot, the same kind of framing, but how it looks with different kind of lenses, and then basically what happens, what are the different effects or artifacts and things like that happen as you change your focal length and your f-stop and those kind of things. The link for the video is in the description of this video, or if you're on a computer and you have annotations enabled, then you can just click right here. And it's like I said, in that tutorial I kind of go through, comparing all the different lenses. And those are probably the kind of things you should do, just try out yourself when you have your camera and you have your kit lens, and you can quickly, like I said, change your focal lengths. After basically, once you feel sort of confident enough, or you've experimented a lot with the lens, with your kit lens, and like, don't get me wrong, like I said, kit lenses, I still use even this kit lens on many music videos I've done or other little productions, because it is, like I said, it is handy to be able to go quickly switch from one focal length to another. So especially if I'm doing the kind of more guerrilla kind of style shooting, no permits, just running around on the street, that's the kind of lens you probably want to use. Now, like I said, if you have low light situations, or if you want to have more control over your depth of field, that's when you want to start getting into other kind of lenses. Now, the next lens that I usually recommend that people buy after the kit lens is this 50mm lens. And the reason why is because it is the closest sort of a focal length that matches a human eye. So it's a very sort of relaxed and very natural looking point of view. Now, this one is for Canon. It's for, you can use it with your Canon DSLRs. But you can, like I said, you can, any camera manufacturer out there, Nikon, Sony, etc., they all make 50mm lenses. So just get the lens, that matches your camera mount. Now, usually the 50mm, like I said, it's a prime lens, meaning it does not zoom. That's just basically, that's the focal length, and that's it. You can add zoom in or out with this lens. But they're usually able to go a little bit faster. So this, for example, lens, it's an f1.8. So like I said, it's compared to this one, which is an f 3.6, I believe. It makes a big difference, in the amount of light that you're gonna get, and also in the kind of shallow depth of field that you can get. Now, what's great about usually these 50mm lenses is that they're actually, because they're so readily available, so popular, they're also fairly inexpensive. So you can get a lens like this one brand new for around $100. If you guys want all the links to some of the lenses that I recommend and stuff like that, then just check out my website at tomantosfilms.com, or just follow the links in the description of this video. I'll provide all the links to where you can buy these lenses, and so that the good and the bad. Now I also have up here some other prime lenses. Again, lenses prime just simply means that they don't allow you to zoom in or out. And these are made by Nikon. These are really old manual Nikon lenses. These are basically some of the first lenses that I personally myself bought. Like this one, for example, it's a 24mm. This one is it's almost 30 years old at this point. Now when I bought it, it was already used. Now what's great about these lenses is that again, you can buy them usually fairly cheap. You just have to look either on eBay or your sort of a local even pawn shops, that kind of stuff. And these old optics, they're especially for filming with your DSLR. What's good about them is that they usually have a manual aperture, basically ring, that you can control up here, and that's great. Basically when you're filming, because usually when you're doing video, you're not shooting in automatic, meaning you don't want the camera to be switching the aperture for you anyways. So basically, by buying like let's say these old Nikon lenses, you can save yourself money. And they're great lenses, very sharp, and very well built. Like for example, this one is made out of steel here, this ring, and aluminium, whereas comparing it to this Canon lens, which again it's good, but it's it's a cheaper plastic material. So that's just kind of what it comes down to. And also like you see up here, this one does not have the ring, the aperture ring for controlling the f-stop or the aperture of your lens. So what that means is that as long as you're using it with a Canon camera, then you're okay. You can adjust the aperture in there. But the second you use, let's say you put this using an adapter onto, let's say, a Sony camera or a Nikon camera, you will not be able to adjust the aperture. So the aperture will just stay wide open, and that's going to be it. Whereas these old manual lenses, like I said, they're all fully manual, which is what you want for filmmaking purposes, and they're cheaper, and you can easily adapt them. Like these ones, many times I've used them on my Canon DSLRs, just like as I've used them on my simple Sony. I have a Sony NEX5 camera that I also recommend. It's a great little cheap filmmaking camera, and I just use this cheap $15 lens adapter. Again, if you guys want to find all those links for where you can get it, check out my website. Yeah, so definitely, if you're out there looking for new lenses to invest in, I would recommend sort of just keep your eyes open on eBay and your local camera stores, pawn shop, that kind of stuff, and always ask if they have any sort of used lenses that they have for trade or sale. And so that's sort of how I got all of these lenses. So this is another sort of a prime lens up here. This one's a 55mm. I also have this one, which is a 105mm. Really good lens too, and it's really fast at f2.5. And now this one, for example, is made by a completely different company called Quanta-Ray, and it's an old, again, zoom lens, which is manual, which is good because again you have the manual aperture ring, and again it's just a really good, inexpensive lens that's fairly fast. Basically, when you zoom in all the way to 300mm up here, which is a really big focal length, you're at f4, which is again, it's not the fastest, but it's decent. And this lens cost me under $100. Just found it used. And now when it comes to these new lenses, again they're really great too. The only thing is, like I said, simply because they're all fully automatic, once you put it on your camera, it basically it's going to work great if you're using it with the camera that the lens has the built-in mount for. So this one is, for example, from Sigma. It's a nice wide-angle lens. It goes from 10 to 20mm. So it's 10mm is really big, almost like a fisheye sort of a look. And it's a good lens, and it's, like I said, made by Sigma, but it has the Canon EF mount, so you can only really use it with the cameras that have Canon EF mounts. You know, you can get these really expensive adapters for these lenses, so that you can basically use it, let's say, with a Sony, let's say, NEX camera, and then it will still allow you to control the aperture. But a lot of these adapters, first of all, they're expensive, you know, $300, $400, and they will not let you basically control the aperture as well, or sometimes the focus is really delayed. Now you can get, again, sort of these similar very cheap $20, $15 adapters, but then again, like I said, you're not gonna be able to control the aperture. So it kind of defeats the purpose, you know, and disables you creatively, because, you know, sometimes you do want to close down the lens to to 10 or 11 or 22 or something like that. Now, one great thing about these new lenses, for example, is like this is again a Sigma lens for the Canon EF mount, and it's a 70 to 300 millimeter lens that's fairly inexpensive. You can get this right now at B&H for around $300. What's good about this lens is that, you know, even though it's not the fastest lens, it has built-in optical stabilization, and that definitely, when you're using lenses that are, you know, with focal lengths that are anywhere above like 150 millimeters, you want to have some kind of, you know, optical stabilization, you know, built into the lens, because, for example, like I said, this lens, you know, really great deal, but it does not have it's all manual, and it does not have optical stabilization built into it. And when you're trying to use this all the way at 300 millimeters, it's almost impossible to not get a shot, basically to not get a little bit of shakiness in your shot. Even when you're using this on a tripod, and you have the tripod locked in, basically a little bit of wind will blow in, and at 300 millimeters, all it takes is just like a tiny little movement of the lens, and that's going to result in shaky image. Whereas if you're using, you know, some of these newer zoom lenses with optical stabilization, then, you know, that will eliminate it. So definitely, if you're trying to, you know, invest into like a longer focal length lens, like I said, 150 millimeters and above, I would say find something that has built-in optical stabilization. Otherwise, you know, for these sort of mid-range lenses, like I said, 100 to 20 millimeters, you know, if you can find deals on you know, in your local stores for used lenses, then I would pick those up. And like I said, just experiment, you know, see what kind of different effects you can get. Again, I have that tutorial that kind of shows you guys, you know, the major differences between different kind of focal lengths. But really, I would just say, you know, at the end of the day, it comes down to you experimenting and trying out the different lenses, because you'll also find that sometimes you just, you know, some people prefer different kind of focal lengths, and they kind of get used to it, and it's a certain aesthetic, and basically will eventually become your sort of shooting style. So, you know, you won't know what really looks good for you unless you try it. And now probably the next step, you know, once you've experimented enough with these DSLR still photography lenses, so the next step up are your sort of, you know, typical cinema lenses. Now there's some great cinema sort of hybrid lenses now being made by Canon even, which are slightly at a reduced price, but they're still so expensive that most likely you're not going to end up buying them. I mean, you know, like some of these lenses cost $2,000, $4,000, $5,000. That's still actually a reduced price. For example, if you wanted to get, for example, like these Panavision anamorphic lenses, which are used on some of these, you know, really big budget films, they're amazing lenses. You know, really sharp, really you know, good color reproduction. Plus, they're just, you know, engineered, you know, exactly, you know, for the needs of a filmmaking scenario. But, you know, one of these lenses costs $20,000, sometimes even $50,000. So pretty much nobody ever buys these lenses. People just rent them. So, you know, once you start getting those bigger jobs where you really feel like you require those kind of optics and that sort of aesthetic look, that's probably when, you know, like I said, you'll end up using those lenses, but most likely just renting them instead of buying them. Now the difference between those cinema lenses and these still lenses is really not that big. Now when I say that, you know, just like when I was one time comparing the Canon 7D to the Red Epic, you know, many people jump on my comments, and you know, when I say that, obviously, you know, there are differences. You know, there's a reason why, for example, like I said, the Red Epic or 7D, they cost, you know, there's a huge big difference in cost. but it, and the difference is there, and it just basically makes it, it makes your work easier, makes it look better aesthetically. But the differences are definitely not when you compare the cost. Like, for example, this lens, $100 versus a lens, let's say, that will cost $50,000. The differences between those lenses are not, you cannot basically justify spending that much more money on that lens, thinking your final product is going to look that much better. I mean, really, what it comes down to is just the need, basically the demand and supply. And these lenses, there's basically more demand for these. There's more photographers out there, and now also filmmakers who are using them. So there's more of them are being manufactured. They're being sold in bigger quantities. Because of that, the costs go down. Whereas those cinema lenses, almost nobody will use them. Very few people. And because of that, there's actually very few of these lenses in the world, and and they cost a lot of money. So that's sort of the main difference. Now, is it good shooting with some of those really expensive cinema lenses? Like Zeiss makes some really nice cinema lenses. Yeah, they're like I said, they're amazing quality. But really, the quality that you get with these kind of SLR lenses is very close to to the quality of those cinema lenses. So like I said, don't think that for example your videos are not looking let's say professional enough. That the reason is because of the lenses. Because really you should be getting really professional kind of quality out there when you're comparing it to big budget films or music videos with these kind of lenses. And like I said, only once those experts out there, once they kind of analyze the image, they'll be able to tell you that, oh, this was shot, for example, with a Panavision anamorphic lenses, and versus this was shot with a still lens. But those differences are like I said, not things that an average viewer will spot. So definitely you cannot blame basically your lenses on the fact that your videos just don't look as good. Some of the bigger differences between those cinema lenses and these lenses, there's the fact that, like I said, they're fully manual, designed to be, for example, they have a manually operated aperture for the iris, and also it's declicked, meaning you can smoothly transition the aperture versus camera lenses, which you'll actually hear this little click. Also, the focus usually marks are on the side of the lens. Those kind of things. In the focus rings, they have a nice gear on there, so you can directly connect follow focus systems and things like that. Also, usually, those really high-end cinema lenses, when you're doing your focusing, you will not see the lens kind of what's called breathing. Basically, the lens will not zoom in or out a little bit during that process. Whereas still lenses, because they're designed just for still photography, and so they can quickly focus in on a subject, and that's it, you snap a photo. When you're using them in video mode and you're adjusting the focus, sometimes you will see tiny little changes in your focal length. So little things like that are, there are basically improvements over these standard lenses. But definitely, like I said, if you're starting out, a good kit lens is the way to go, then a 50mm prime lens, and then just sort of build your collection slowly on top of that and add other lenses. You will probably also want to experience, for example, like here I have these Lensbaby lenses. There's two different mounts here, and then all kinds of optics that come with them. I'm going to do a whole other video about what kind of effects you can get with these lenses, but these are again specialty lenses that are you can get some really cool effects with them. But it's again, it's not something that you're going to be using when you're just starting out. So like I said, once you've had a little bit of experimentation with your most typical lenses, you probably want to get into stuff like this. And then eventually, like I said, maybe into, if your job requires, into some really high-end cinema lenses. So anyways, I hope this video answers most of your questions when it comes to lenses. And again, if you guys have more questions for me, best way probably is to go follow the link in the description of this video. That will take you to the article on my website, and there you can basically ask me anything further about the lenses, and I can answer to you publicly, so other people can see. In this way I don't have to repeat myself, because sometimes I end up getting a lot of emails from you guys, which I love getting, but it's just sometimes it's hard to actually answer all of them. And also a lot of the questions are repeating, so instead of me having to answer the same question 100 times to 100 different people, it's just better if you guys, like I said, go to my website. It's tomantosfilms.com. And over there, I can sort of publicly explain, and answer some of your questions that you may have. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next week for another cool tutorial. As always, like I said, check out my website, tomantosfilms.com. You can find other tutorials out there. Also, the link for an older tutorial I did about different focal lengths and different effects you can get with different lenses. I'm going to repost again on my website, so definitely check that out. If you want to help support what I do and all the sort of free information I give out, then I also have some cool exclusive filmmaking tutorials that you can get on my website when you go to tomantosfilms.com and then click on the store link above. Thank you, and see you guys next week.